Hello, everyone. My name is Meredith Taylor, and I'm the Community Relations Manager for cityCURRENT. Welcome to Get On Board, at home and virtual volunteering, ways that you can still serve. cityCURRENT's Get On Board series is personally one of my favorite things that we do because we cover a wide array of topics pertaining to effective nonprofit board service and servant leadership. Whether it's exploring what to know before you serve or mastering the art of nonprofit storytelling, there's always something new to learn. For the purpose of today's webinar, we will be discussing how COVID-19 has impacted volunteerism in both Memphis and Nashville, what the greatest needs are in each city, and how we can safely roll up our sleeves and give back during this time. I could not be more thrilled to be joined by industry experts from Volunteer Odyssey and Hands On Nashville, who will be presenting on their respective organizations and lending us their knowledge on these topics. I also have cityCURRENT's Director of Digital Media, Andrew Bartolotta, here with me, so that he can take questions throughout the event so we can be sure to have them answered during the Q&A session at the end. So let's get started, shall we? Our first presenter and panelist is Dr. Sarah Petchnik, founder and CEO of Volunteer Odyssey, a volunteer center in Memphis, Tennessee. Since its founding, Volunteer Odyssey has partnered with nonprofits throughout the Memphis area, as well as the City of Memphis, the University of Memphis, and media partners such as cityCURRENT to grow and promote volunteerism. Over the last 2 years, Volunteer Odyssey has engaged more than 12,000 volunteers in 260,000 hours of service, which is an economic impact of more than 5 million for the Memphis area. Dr. Petchnik was a speaker at TEDx Memphis, has been honored as Superwoman in Business by the Memphis Business Journal, and named one of the top 50 under 40 social entrepreneurs in the US by American Express. Dr. Petchnik holds a PhD in industrial organizational psychology, a Master of Science, and an MBA. Thank you so much for being here today, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Meredith. I'm excited to talk with everybody today. All right, you ready for me to switch to screen share?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. All right, does that look good?
Looks great.
Okay, great. Well, I'm excited to talk with all of you today. I know we have some folks attending from Memphis and some folks from Nashville. So I'm going to give you about a short overview, 10 minutes or so, of how Volunteer Odyssey got started, what our focus is, and a little bit about what we're doing right now. So when I was very young, we used to collect food for our local food pantry. And around the time I turned 6 or 7, I started to wonder why we did that. And my parents explained that there are a lot of people who work really hard, but they may still need some extra help to make ends meet. And as I kind of reflect on that story, I think that's especially relevant today as we're seeing people who are going hungry and this increased need for food distribution. And at the time, at that age, that made a huge impression on me. And my parents explained that because we could help, we should. And they explained one of the best ways to do that was to go and get a good education. So fast forward, and I graduated from the University of Memphis 4 times. I have degrees in business and in psychology. And that really helped and shaped my understanding of how you participate in the community and how you can make a difference. So fast forward, I had the opportunity to stay in Memphis and take a job here, or sorry, these seem to be auto advancing, take a job here or go to Nashville and take a job there. And so I decided to throw caution to the wind. I went to Nashville and I was standing there looking out of my window one day. This is not me, by the way. And I was watching the landscaping crew just toiling away in the heat. And as I stood there and thought about my job and how hard I'd worked to get there, I suddenly wished I was out there with them instead. And that was the moment that I realized that I hated my job and life was too short. And so I did the only logical thing you can do at a brand new job in a new city, which is to quit. Now, this wasn't as easy as it sounded. This is something I'd been working towards for a long time. But fortunately, while I was in Nashville, I did a lot of volunteering. It had always been part of my life. And I was fortunate to get connected with Hands On Nashville very early and did a lot of volunteering with them while I lived in Nashville. And so after I quit my job, I came home to Memphis and I decided I was going to do a project called Mission Memphis, where I was going to volunteer 30 days in a row, 30 different nonprofits, and write about everywhere that I went. And it was one of the most amazing and challenging experiences that I've ever had. but it's opened up a lot of questions for me. Why was it harder to volunteer in Memphis than it was in Nashville? I was comparing our system to what Hands on Nashville was able to do. So I started a second project called Volunteer Bound, where I drove across the country and stopped and volunteered at all the major cities along this route to understand how other cities do volunteerism. What is it that we can learn from other communities so that we can make Memphis one of the best places to volunteer, make it easy for us to help others? So I learned a couple things. Memphis, even though we always make the list as one of the most financially giving cities, we have been at the bottom of the list for our volunteer rate, especially when compared to Nashville. The other is that most people say they want to help, they just don't know where to start. And it's so important to have this clean, clear, easy starting point so that anytime somebody thinks, I should really volunteer, that there's a really easy, simple way for them to do that. And three, there were so many obstacles to getting engaged with volunteering. Some of you have probably had an experience like this. You want to sign up to distribute food or pack boxes, and they want you to download a form, fill it out, print it, fax it back just to sign up for a simple opportunity. There are all these obstacles in the way of getting started. So that's where Volunteer Odyssey came in. I took these lessons that I had learned from Nashville and from other cities around the country to understand how can we make a really impactful volunteer center here in Memphis. So why we do it? I always like to share a story, kind of a mission moment about why volunteerism matters. And this story is, before everything closed down for the outbreak, but this is from one of our partners here called the Carpenter Art Garden. The Carpenter Art Garden is in a neighborhood called Binghamton that is not very well resourced. And they are right down the street from a school. So after school, kids can come to the art garden. They can do projects. They can do things that keep them out of trouble, off the streets, help keep adults' eyes on them, and do something creative, do something meaningful. But they also do after-school tutoring. And they told us that they can only take 2 kids per tutor. And I asked, well, what happens if you don't have enough tutors? And they said, that happens every day. The kids know it's first come, first serve. And so the kids literally run from school to the Carpenter Art Garden to get help with their homework after school. And if they're not first in line, they get turned away because they can't take in any more students. And it's not a limit of the space, it's a limit of the number of volunteers. So you have kids who are clamoring for help with homework, who don't have anybody there who can help them. And that is why, that's a perfect example of why we need more volunteers. So Carpenter Art Garden is just one example, but we have lots of organizations that we work with and support around the Memphis area. We have a platform that we use that you can come and you can search volunteer opportunities all across the city. You can search by the type of event you want to do. You can search by cause. You can search by skill, area of town. One of our most popular features is our calendar. We have opportunities every day of the week, nights, evenings, weekends, so that you can find an easy way to get involved. So our impact, Meredith shared some of these stats at the beginning, and I updated these earlier today. We've logged more than 40,000 acts of service and more than 220,000 hours of service, which has been a huge economic impact for the city of Memphis. But there's always more work to do. So this is a heat map of where volunteers are out volunteering in the community right now. Kind of shows you where some of the hot spots have been over the last, well, this is pre-outbreak, over the first couple months of the year. That's the data I pulled. But it takes a lot of organizations to make this work and to make this successful, as I'm sure Jason will share as well. So we work with more than 50 organizations in the Memphis area, probably a lot on here that you recognize. But you can imagine this has shifted tremendously over the last couple of weeks, and we'll talk a lot more about that in just a few minutes. But we also work, in addition to our nonprofits, with partners like cityCURRENT, who are amazing at getting the community involved, telling these positive stories, which I'm sure, as you all know, is especially important right now. There's so much bad news, there's so much scary news. It's so helpful to have an organization that's continuing to encourage people to do good and to share those positive stories. So we're really proud to be cityCURRENT service partner for the Memphis area. We also work with local bloggers like I Love Memphis that have a huge following. And one of my very proud moments was when we became the official service partner for the University of Memphis, my alma mater. So we work directly with the university. So we post all the service opportunities that the students can choose from. And the university then uses our software to track all of those student hours. So we're reducing paperwork for the students, for the university, for those nonprofits, and really connecting them quickly to meaningful service opportunities opportunities in our community. So there are a lot of moving pieces, a lot of different organizations involved. And I know we're going to dive more into what opportunities look like right now. So I'm going to pause here and I'm going to turn this back over to Meredith so she can talk about what comes next and to introduce Jason from Hands on Nashville. So I'll turn it back over to Meredith.
Hey, Meredith, you might want to unmute. There you go.
Sorry about that, guys. I was just saying thank you, Sarah. Memphis is so lucky to have an organization like Volunteer Odyssey connecting its citizens to meaningful volunteer opportunities. So thank you for that presentation. Next, we've got Jason Shelton, skilled volunteer program manager for Hands on Nashville, who brings more than 25 years of experience in ministry and nonprofit leadership to his team. He currently runs Hands on Nashville's Geek Cause program, which matches skilled IT volunteers with nonprofit technology needs. Jason was on the ground coordinating the Hands on Nashville tornado response in North Nashville last month, but now spends his days in his living room, like most of us. He received a Master of Divinity from Vanderbilt in 2003, where he focused on the role of the arts and community development. Also a professional choir director, composer, and singer, Jason has recruited and organized volunteers for hundreds of artistic performances throughout North America, culminating recently with 3 nationally televised appearances for the Country Music Association and a show at the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History. Well, take it away, Jason.
Thanks, Meredith, and thanks, Sarah, for setting up everything I needed to say about Hands on Nashville, so I can just skip that part. It's great to be with you all today, and to our guests out there, especially my colleague Drew, who I saw in the participant list, so he's going to be making sure I get this right, I imagine. Hi, Drew. Be nice to me. It's great to be with you all and to talk about volunteerism in this very strange time. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as well. Where is my... At Hands on Nashville, we've been rethinking volunteerism in this virtual way for a while now through the Geek Cause program, which was founded by JJ Rosen, who's a technology entrepreneur in Nashville. And JJ, for a long time, a lot of the technology companies in the area were thinking, what can we do to give back? And thinking how we can use our particular skills as IT professionals to serve the nonprofit needs of our community. So it feels like a moment that's actually really perfect for where we are right now, because we've been doing this virtual volunteerism for several years through the Geek Cause program with IT professionals, because most of the work that people do, they never actually meet the folks in person that they're working for, the projects that we do. But before I get too far into that, I want to talk to you about Hands on Nashville just a little bit. That Sarah didn't cover everything. So, oh, that's me back when I had facial hair and a much shorter haircut. Oh, remember haircuts? Weren't they fun? Hands on Nashville does also traditional volunteering, the things that Sarah was talking about, you know, the kind of, we need people to show up and paint the bench. We need people to show up and serve food. We need to do all those kind of things. We serve a number of community partners. Over 170 agencies are partners with Hands on Nashville, and whatever their volunteer needs are, we help them get posted. We help them reach our network of volunteers, which increased by about 30,000 people last month when the tornado came through Nashville, and everybody seemed to sign up for Hands on Nashville in about 3 days, which was a lot of fun for us. Also, just an incredible swelling of goodwill, and so people are still really eager to get involved. How do we put those folks who are queued up and ready to go into projects in our community? It's a question we're certainly dealing with right now. So we have about 170 partner organizations. We also do a number of corporate projects. That's you know, again, a corporate department says, we want to serve our community in some way. Can you help us? This is what we're good at. Can you help us find a project? Or we work with conventions that come into town. And a lot of it, that's a pretty popular thing right now when conventions come into a town. that there will be some sort of service project aligned with the organization coming in, and we help that organization find a way to serve in the community. So that's one of our primary income streams, actually, is doing corporate projects, all of which are kind of on hold at the moment. Because that kind of thing requires a crowd. It requires lots of people in lots of places that we just can't do. So we're doing a lot of rethinking and strategizing for how those projects are going to move forward when we're able to do so, keeping people engaged as much as we can through communication, through online opportunities, and really trying to help our nonprofit partners recognize the opportunities that are there, instead of saying, well, there's nothing people can do. How can we help them engage? How can we help them ask the questions that are going to generate the opportunities that then we can help match them with volunteers? Our program works just like what Sarah said, which I think she stole from us, which is fine. You know, you can search our website, handsonnashvillehan.org. You can search for opportunities, you can search by date, you can search by the kind of thing you want to do. All those kind of things are there, so it makes it really easy to engage. You just sign up one time and jump right in. Where we're venturing out is through this Geek Cause program, through looking at the idea of skilled volunteerism, which is to say, you know, we're not just looking at who can do whatever we need, but we're asking, what particular skills do you have, and how can we use those particular skills to meet volunteer needs? And technology is a huge need. As anyone who's ever worked in nonprofit knows, that the nonprofit world, just about everyone I've ever worked for, is about 12 to 13 years behind in technology as where you are in the corporate world. So we're always, you know, I remember working for an agency when we got email for the first time, and it was really exciting. And I remember when we got internet, and it was beyond dial-up, and you know, but we were years behind other organizations in that way. So I have this brief clip from the movie Ghost, which came out in the 80s, if you remember the 80s, and this kind of shows what the nonprofit technology experience sometimes feels like. Oh, poor Carl. This is not an uncommon experience in the nonprofit world of having technology that is behind the times, or often because of the turnover in the nonprofit world, having technology that was set up not necessarily accurately at the point it was set up, and then you're about 5, 6, 7 staff people inheriting that poor setup and having to keep doing things the way it's always been done. I think we've all heard that phrase a few times. We do things because that's how we always do it. And nonprofit is so focused on their service that the idea of stopping long enough to ask whether or not what we're doing is the way it should be done, or can we do this in a way that more efficiently, can we do it better, feels like pulling away from our service. It feels like pulling away from mission, and not realizing that having effective engagement with technology, effective and efficient engagement with technology actually saves you time exponentially over a month, over a year, over several years, that you then put back into service, instead of wrestling with computers that don't work right, or with manual entry here, here, and here, here, because it's not automated in a way that connects all your data. Or now that we're certainly living in this time of everything being data driven, and so many of our funding requests are, show us the data about your service. Well, if I can't manipulate my data in a way that actually gets me the information I need to present to my funders, I'm behind. So how do I get that information set up in a way that gives me what I need? So we've been asking these questions and looking at matching skilled IT volunteers with nonprofit need. These are the folks that this is easy. You know, it's, if you know what you're doing with technology, it's easy for you to go set up somebody's IT infrastructure or their internet connectivity. I had an organization call me a couple months ago and said, I just need Wi-Fi in the back of the office and I can't get it to work. And I sent a person out there, they came out, they walked through the building, they said, go buy these 2 things and I'll set it up for you. And it just, you know, it's how many months or years has that organization been toiling, you know, with things not working well because they didn't know all they needed were those couple of things. But for someone who knows what they're doing, and it's a simple task of just going to Best Buy, and that's not a plug for Best Buy, but you know, you can get what you need and go plug it in, and all of a sudden everything is so much better for them, and they can go back to serving, right? So part of what I do is a term that I have just coined called Geek-CURRENT. So I go to recruit IT professionals. I'm very proud of that, Geek-CURRENT. And we ask what kind of service, what kind of technology can you bring? And how do we get our nonprofit partners to even ask the question, what do you need? Right now, the program Geek Cause has been around about 1.5 years. And at first, we had a lot of early adopters, a lot of organizations that knew exactly what they needed and asked for what they needed right away. And we had some amazing projects in the first year. And now we're starting to shift our questions to the nonprofit end and say, how do we help you even ask the right questions so that we can then generate the kind of projects that will serve you? So we have people in our system who've signed up to volunteer who are database people, data management people, coders, app development, data folks, finance folks. Web design is a huge thing for us. Salesforce, database, IT security, something that a lot of our nonprofit partners don't even think about. You know, how do we ask what happens if you have a data breach? What happens if your donor lists are exposed and that sensitive information gets out? Nonprofits are easy pickings for hackers, for a lot of folks who want to do those kind of things because they tend to have less security in place already. How do you do digital marketing, your project management, what's your strategy for IT down the road? We're trying to help nonprofits ask those kind of questions, and we're starting with some simple templates that here are some bullet points. You know, you probably need a new website, or you probably need someone to look at it and make it effective. Again, when you've had maybe someone set up that website 5, 6, 7 years ago, and that person is long gone. We don't know why it works the way it does, but I know you have to click here and then do this and then drag that over there. And I don't know why, but that's the job. And how many minutes a day do you spend doing that? That could have been a simple click that add up and add up and add up over time when you know, that refresh for looking at the website through contemporary eyes for what the widgets are that are out there right now makes a huge difference for any organization. So here's a testament from the Bishop Springs Medical Clinic. It's just made life easier. You know, we didn't know how to do this stuff, and we didn't have anybody around who knows how to do this stuff. And getting someone for whom it was really easy to spend a couple of hours making our life easier has let us focus back more on our service, and that's really what we're all hoping to do with volunteerism. This is a bit of a screenshot from a web organization. The Tennessee Environmental Council was doing we're trying to automate a certain process, and it's a simple Google form that, again, for those folks was really easy to do, and they designed the graphic, they designed the form, they integrated it with their database, and they're able to get all kinds of interactivity for their volunteers that are signing up to help that reduces the number of, well, now we have to enter it over here, then we have to sign them in over there, and it's all automated now. Again, minutes a day saved per volunteer adds up and adds up, adds up over time. All of this happens virtually. Very few of our projects involve someone actually going on site to a nonprofit, with the exception of the guy who went and fixed their internet in the back of the building. That's the first one since I came on staff in December that actually required a volunteer to show up at the nonprofit, because it actually was about physical IT infrastructure. But most of the time it's web developers or database people doing their work from their office or from home and having web calls just like the one we're on, getting the information they need, and delivering for nonprofits without ever actually meeting them in person. So like I said, we are kind of a tailor-made program for this moment. If we can help our nonprofit partners stop long enough and ask the question, just like we're doing with our corporate program and with our community partner program, and saying, how can we rethink our process in this moment where we're not running around doing all the things we do? Well, can we reinvest that time in rethinking our processes? Because we're looking at who knows if we're going to go back to quote unquote normal. So how do we engage this moment and think about it moving forward as a way to engage volunteerism that matches the world we live in? If you want to get involved, we invite you to look at han.org. That's Hands on Nashville, han.org, and /Geek Cause will tell you more about our program, as in han.org, as all of our volunteer opportunities are there as well. We would love to get the word out about the program. Again, right now, most of our time is spent trying to convince nonprofits to let us help them and think more about their technology needs, because they don't even know this is possible. And that is my spiel. So I'm going to turn it back to Meredith. Thanks.
Thank you, Jason. Certainly, Geek Cause and the need for virtual volunteer opportunities are going to be more, important than ever as we continue to navigate, the future and this virtual world that we're living in. I now want to start with some panel questions before we turn it over to the Q&A session from attendees. So for both of you guys, I would like to know just how has COVID-19 affected volunteerism in your respective cities?
Sure, I'll go first. So for Memphis, I would say in general, it has really brought volunteerism as we know it to essentially a screeching halt. I would say probably 90% of the opportunities that we had before are not happening right now. But that doesn't mean we don't need volunteers or the people aren't volunteering. So what we've seen is a massive and immediate shift to food distribution as being our biggest current need for in-person volunteers. That has just exploded, as you can imagine. There are more people than ever who need food right now, but also because the schools are closed, there are a lot of kids who aren't getting food at school. So this essential food distribution has been really critical. And we've seen sites pop up all over Memphis using existing infrastructure. And so as an example, the YMCA, gyms are closed right now. And so YMCA sites all throughout Memphis have shifted to food distribution as one of their primary focus areas, which is, really incredible to see them partnering with our local food bank, the Mid-South Food Bank, to do that quickly. The other thing is we have seen an increase in these virtual and remote volunteer opportunities, and that's something we've been actively trying to help and promote, help nonprofits think through that. Jason mentioned this a little bit, but when all of this started, we emailed our nonprofit partners and said, hey, while in-person is on hold, do you have any virtual or remote opportunities? And we heard back from almost no one, understandably, because everybody was in crisis mode trying to adapt and shift. And now we're reaching out to the nonprofits individually and saying, hey, can we help you think through ways that you could use virtual and remote volunteers during this time? And so we're seeing that increase a lot in terms of the kinds of opportunities that are available. As you can imagine, mask making is a big one, sending messages of hope, putting together care packages, but even things like starting seedlings to send out to community centers around the city and things like that. So it's completely shifted how people volunteer and where we're focusing our time right now.
Jason?
Same as what Sarah said. We have the added layer of, in the very beginning of March, the tornado that came through Nashville. We had an exponential engagement of volunteers. We had 30,000 people sign up to volunteer through Hands on Nashville in 3 days at the very beginning of that effort. And we engaged 26,000 of them in volunteer projects. So over those 2 weeks, just a massive, massive effort. And then all of a sudden everything stopped. So we have, in addition to food and shelter needs, we still have disaster relief efforts going on. There are still all those homes that are being repaired. There's still chainsaw work. There's still lots of ways that people can engage that are keeping in line with the Safer at Home guidelines, that aren't about crowds, that are about small individual pieces. But we're having to figure out what those are. How do we track those opportunities? How do we find, again, this isn't show up and do what you want. You actually have to know what you're doing. You have to have skills. We actually did see some community effort during the tornado disaster relief of just anybody with a chainsaw showing up. And it was a little scary at times. Some people just wielding chainsaws in the middle of the street. So we're looking for skilled people, again, talking about skilled volunteers and people who have particular skills related to disaster relief. What are the skills you bring? Are you certified in those skills? Because we're seeing, through a lot of different organizations that are trying to engage disaster relief efforts, we need people who bring particular skills, who are certified, who can show up at a particular day. When can you do these things that are very much professional skills related to disaster relief in the midst of the craziness of COVID-19?
And you guys both kind of touched on this in the previous question, but is there anything you would like to add in terms of what the greatest volunteer needs are in both Memphis and Nashville?
As we said, food, shelter, mask making. There was an effort and has been an effort for volunteers coordinating at COVID-19 testing sites for directing traffic and just getting people into the right place. But again, anything we do is all within keeping of the Safer at Home guidelines and on crowd control. No more than 10 people engaged in any particular effort, and if it can be outside, the better.
Yeah, same what Jason said. I mean, the food distribution is huge. Making masks is huge. But we have other ways for people to get involved too. So as an example, Le Bonheur Children's Hospital here, they've asked for people to make short little videos to send messages of hope to the patients and the families at Le Bonheur. We've seen that from Make-A-Wish as well. And so they're all different ways that you can help from home. We're calling it Make a Difference from a Distance. So there are all kinds of things that you can do without leaving the safety of your house. I feel like Jason just wrote that down.
What tips do you have?
I'm definitely writing that down. Yeah.
What tips do you guys have for nonprofits that are trying to plan volunteer activities right now, whether they're virtual or at home?
It's a great time to be creative, to really think about what are the small things that you need. So many, again, going back to the technology piece, a lot of the opportunities people have, they wouldn't even think about, oh, you know what, if we had volunteers who could help us sort through this paperwork or through this database work or stuff that's going to help us do our reporting in a way to help us get through this. There are people who can help you with that. They don't have to show up, and they can do it from their living room or their home office. But it takes a different way of thinking, and we're very happy. Our people like Drew, in fact, who's on this call, who's in our community partner program. If you need that kind of help, you can call Hands on Nashville, and someone like Drew will help you. Ask some questions that'll help you think about that kind of engagement. What are the ways you could be doing things? And there are people that are so eager to help. Like I said, we had this massive influx of people who want to do things, and now they're just kind of sitting and waiting. So, how do we get them engaged? And any little thing, I know certainly everybody I know is looking for something else to do besides watch Netflix and yell at their children, which is happening a lot, So encouraging people to think through those questions, because the projects are there. There's all kinds of stuff that people can do to help, but we have to think about it differently.
Yeah, I agree. We host workshops for nonprofits a couple times a year here in Memphis. And one of the sections that we talk about is how to figure out what your volunteer opportunities are. And one of the things I would say is, make sure, especially right now, to the nonprofits, that you're asking people to do things that you need. One of the things we're seeing is that the nonprofits are sort of like, trying to meet the demands from the volunteers who want to help. And so we're trying to help the nonprofits, almost give them permission to say, like, you can set, what is helpful to you. So we talk about in our workshops, having basically a menu of ways that people can help. So these are the different things. These are the descriptions, making the descriptions clear and engaging, but also potentially having what we call a secret menu, which is a lot of times what Jason is doing, which is if you had, Michelle Obama show up at your office, or, if you had somebody with a particular skill or a celebrity or whatever that is, like, how can you take somebody with a really special skill set and get them to do something very high value for your organization, just like this Geek Cause idea that Jason's talking about. The other thing I would say is we always tell the nonprofits, if I gave you a magic wand and you could have a volunteer come in and do anything that you wanted, anything at all, what would that be? What would your teammates say that would be? And that kind of frees people up to think a little bit more creatively about, how they can use volunteers, but also holding true to what are their highest needs at this time and making sure that they're making use of volunteers in a way that's beneficial to the mission of the organization.
What would you guys say has been the biggest challenge each of your organizations have had to face during this time? And then also, kind of in that same vein, what has been the greatest growth opportunity?
Yeah, I think our greatest challenge is just that we have so many challenges on so many different fronts all at once. So we're a nonprofit, just like our partners are, and it's a difficult thing to operate right now. But also knowing that our partners who we've been working with for years and have this great system set up for how they use volunteers for clothes closets and food pantries, like all that is changing. I think just trying to help people adapt, or just watch as they try to adapt, and maybe there's not something that we can do to help. I think that's been really difficult, because I think everybody who works at our organization is a roll up your sleeves and get in there and help kind of thing, and the best thing we can do is kind of stay away right now a lot of the time. That's been really difficult. I think one of the positive things is that we have seen a lot of people who want to help. There's a trend in Memphis and nationally where searches for how can I help are spiking, which is really, just kind of a warm moment, I think, for people wanting to help people. I think that's been one of the things that tells me that, we have people who want to help now, but also gives me hope for as we transition out of this, whatever that looks like, that at the end of the day, there are so many good people in the world who want to make a difference. And that's just really refreshing to think about.
Yeah, it is. I think the biggest challenge I see is around morale. We who work in volunteerism kind of traffic in the warm fuzzies. This is a job that you just feel great about all the time. Everything you do is like, wow, that was helpful. That was helpful. That was helpful. And then to go, I'm not sure if we can be helpful right now, or I don't know how to be helpful. And that's a really challenging emotional reality. So putting that energy into rethinking what is useful, and then helping our partner organizations ask those questions. But anytime you're asking organizations to rethink their mission, I mean, for a lot of places, that's a multi-year process. And we're saying, get it done this week so we can get people engaged and help you so that you're still going to be here a few months from now. If we just all just hang it up and say we're not going to do anything until this is over. Well, we don't know what that means. We don't know what over looks like. And we need to be preparing to adapt to that reality long term right now.
Well, we have several questions coming in from our audience that I think would be cool to answer, some of them just from the conversation we're having right now. Sarah, how does an organization become a nonprofit partner in Memphis?
Sure. The easiest way is just to send me an email. I can drop it in the chat, but it's Sarah, SARAH, @volunteerodyssey.com. And I think Meredith has a slide at the end with our contact information. So just shoot me an email and we'll get you all set up.
And Jason, what are some user-friendly tools nonprofits can use to update their technology?
There's a website called Techsoup.org, which is a kind of a shop for nonprofits looking for technology resources that are deeply, deeply discounted for nonprofit organizations. Everything you need, you can find at TechSoup with licenses and I'm not just trying to give them a plug, but that's where those organizations that sell that stuff at full price will offer a nonprofit version through TechSoup. So highly recommend TechSoup.org. And give me a call through the Geek Cause website, han.org/Geek Cause, and you can find out a lot more about what are your resources. One of the things that we get a lot of in Nashville, because we have the Frist Foundation, which offers technology grants to nonprofits. One of their requirements is that you have to have a technology audit in order to qualify for a grant. So we're seeing a lot of that start to kick up, where a nonprofit will come to me and say, I need someone who can come in and kind of review our entire infrastructure and then make some recommendations, so then we can apply for a grant to upgrade our technology. I'm not sure if there's anything like that in Memphis, but the Frist Foundation has been incredibly generous and supportive also of the Geek Cause program itself.
And let's see. Okay, so Tracy at Hutchison asked, many of our teens' internships have been canceled for the summer. So are there any tips for their eager teens looking to help their community?
Yeah, so in the Memphis area, we have a link that I can share with you that's the current highest needs in the community. And some of those are in person, but some of those are from home as well. So that's a great way for those students to explore and see what it is that they're interested in doing. Another thing that we really encourage, and it's a great growth and leadership opportunity, is for students to make lists of the causes that they care about, and then research what organizations are addressing those causes in their community, and reach out and say, hey, I have time. I like these things, or these are my skills. How can I help? And of course, we're here to help with that too.
And I think too, using technology right now, for a lot of the teenagers, I mean, they're digital natives for sure. So they're able to master Instagram and different social media channels. So maybe there may be some digital opportunities like Jason was speaking about to help with smaller nonprofits with their digital marketing, because I know a lot of times digital marketing budgets are quite small for those small and medium-sized nonprofits.
I think that's a fantastic idea, Andrew. In an informal way for teenagers to engage with nonprofits and say, look, these are the things I know to do, and I can help you with this. I think more formally through my program, there's some liability issues that we might be less inclined to make those projects happen, but that's a great thing to just reach out. I mean, I certainly know we're gonna have a lot of teenagers with a lot of time on their hands this summer. I know I just got my first summer camp cancellation notice for my 11-year-old. Her Girl Scout camp is canceled this summer. And, you know, I know those things are going to start to snowball. So we're going to have kids with a lot of time on their hands. So asking exactly the question Sarah was saying, you know, make a list of what you can do and how you could be helpful. And then let's just call around and see if you can do it. Spend a couple hours a day doing a thing that would make, you know, a difference for a nonprofit organization. I think that's a great summer project for a lot of our kids.
Do you all have any virtual workshops or virtual trainings on the schedule right now that our audience can go ahead and sign up for?
We don't have any right now, but it's definitely something that we're thinking about. I think the mayor's office just put out more updated information about kind of what our timeline looks like. So we're kind of working that into our plan. So if we do have any workshops coming up, we'll post that in our social media and on our newsletter. And so if anybody wants to stay up to date on that, you can subscribe to our newsletter, and that's the best way to stay on top of that.
I can't speak so much to Hands on Nashville, but I know that one of our partners, the Center for Nonprofit Management in Nashville, is having a lot of online content, a lot of online workshops. And again, that whole question of how do you shift your mission into a virtual reality is a lot of what they're focusing on right now. So cnm.org, highly recommend that organization as well.
And I think the equivalent of that in Memphis is Momentum Nonprofit Partners. So they have trainings on all kinds of things. And we did do a webinar with them, I guess about 3 weeks ago, around volunteer engagement. And so if anybody wants a copy of that, just shoot me an email and I'll send you the link to it.
Great. And Sarah, more broadly, Volunteer Odyssey is all about making meaningful volunteer opportunities. So what makes an opportunity meaningful?
That's such a good question, Andrew. I think at the end of the day, it's about whether or not it is something that furthers the mission of that organization. And I would also say that it should be something that you enjoy doing on some level. One of the things we say that sometimes surprises people is that volunteering should be at least a little bit selfish, because you should like what you're doing. If you hate what you're doing, you're eventually going to find ways to get out of it or stop going back. And so finding things that you like that are related to the mission are really important, even if it's not your dream project. One of my favorite stories of this is that we had a group of volunteers that was asked to pull staples out of a picnic table, and they didn't understand why they were doing it. And the director came by and explained that the staples were rusty. And the kids, when they got to come outside, they would do their homework at the picnic tables and then they would get scraped up. And so it was helping keeping the kids safe by taking these staples out. And so something that simple can be meaningful when you understand how it connects to the work of the organization.
Certainly the work of skilled volunteerism, it takes that to the next level, which is to say, what are you good at? And what are you're licensed even, or you're an expert in your field? And how could a nonprofit benefit from what you know? The value of that is pretty incredible, and that's one of the great joys of the program that I run is to see, IT folks are not cheap. If you want to go hire a consultant to do this kind of work, so we put a dollar value for every hour of volunteerism put into a project, and we've seen some pretty incredibly high dollar value projects come through when people buy into the mission of the organization they're working for. So that's what's really exciting. We had a project that came out at the end of last year, that wrapped up the end of last year, that was an LGBT youth shelter that was looking to develop a mobile app so they could register kids as they came in at night and keep track of their needs and that kind of thing. And we got a volunteer engaged who was just going to give them a consult on what they needed to do. And then it turns out he's also the CEO of a web development, app development company. And he just fell in love with their mission. And he said, we're going to do this for you. And he got his team to spend 2 weeks knocking the thing out, built them a custom web app that in the end, we valued at a $67,000 project that cost the nonprofit, I think, $250. And now they have a mobile app on their iPads, and it's open source so that other folks can use it as well and develop it and customize it in ways that's going to make a difference. And the organization is just absolutely thrilled to have made that kind of impact. And the nonprofit is over the moon to have something so useful that they could never have dreamed of having done if they were going to hire out for something like that.
So one last question. If you could, and using Sarah's magic wand that she helps nonprofits gain. So if you both had a magic wand, what is something that you would tell nonprofits that to use this time to change or adapt, or to use this sort of unfortunate downtime to move their nonprofit forward once we can get back to this new normal?
Well, I think I mentioned when I gave my little presentation, one of the things we're looking at in the Geek Cause program is designing templates for nonprofits. Again, if we just say to the nonprofits, whatever you want to do as a technology project, we could help you with. And they look at you like, oh. But if you say, you probably need someone to look at your website, they go, oh, right, we do. You probably need someone to help you with your data for grant funding. Right, we need that, which means you need to look at your database. You need someone to talk about security and your overall IT infrastructure. These are ongoing constant questions for any organization. So how do we get those questions in front of our nonprofit partners and have them realize, oh yeah, of course I need to do that. I should have 100 organizations on, knocking on my door saying, please have someone look at our website and someone help us with our data reporting. Knowing that even is possible, but it requires them to ask a set of questions that nonprofits aren't necessarily oriented toward asking. So we're trying to kind of spoon feed that to our partners and say, you probably need this, don't you? And they, oh, right. And then here's what we could give you. Just sign up,
Yeah, I think that's a great point in general about how hard it is to move forward on something that's abstract and nebulous versus things that are clearly defined. And that's the case for what the volunteer opportunities are, but also what skills you have as the volunteer. And so I think this is a great time to think about, what are your volunteer needs now? What are your most critical volunteer needs going forward that are mission related? But also thinking about your volunteer process. One of the other things we do during our workshops is that we ask the people who come to sign up as if they were the volunteer, especially on using their phone. And that will very quickly highlight a lot of the issues and challenges with your volunteer sign up process. Are you still asking people to fax things? Is your waiver cut off on the mobile device? Things like that. So putting together these really healthy processes is sort of capacity building for your overall volunteer structure so that you can handle these new inquiries, but also when we go quote unquote back to normal and we see an uptick in people coming and doing physical volunteer projects, that your infrastructure is there and clean and easy to use so that volunteers can sign up quickly. And of course, if you're interested in listing volunteer opportunities with Volunteer Odyssey, we have a website that can do that for you and can show you how it can fit into your existing systems to make that really seamless for your volunteers.
Well, these were some great questions from the audience. Thank you, Sarah and Jason, so much for being here and sharing your expertise and knowledge with us. We've got their contact information on the screen here. Feel free to reach out to them if you didn't get to ask a question that you had today, or we leave this and you think, oh, shoot, I should have asked them that. Also, be sure to follow cityCURRENT on social media. We've got tons of workshops coming up with awesome topics related to this time. You can also find out more information about workshops on our website, and this recording will be sent to you all in a thank you for attending email following this webinar. So thank you all for being here today, and thank you, Sarah and Jason, for presenting.
Thanks so much, Meredith. Sarah, good to see you. Andrew, thanks for hosting us.
Thanks, y'all. Stay healthy, and we'll see y'all soon.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.